Load and Reload are possibly the two most polarizing Metallica albums. When these albums first dropped in the mid-90s, a lot of Metallica fans were thrown off by the band's new direction, and a lot of people were not fans of this new sound. However, in the almost 30 years since these albums were released, a lot of people have come around to these albums. Obviously, I was not around when these were released, but I have heard a lot of people say they have changed their mind on these albums. And with the Load box set releasing just a few months ago, I heard actually a lot of positive comments regarding the album. Personally, I happen to like Load and Reload quite a bit. I come back to them pretty frequently. However, if you were to ask any Metallica fan whether they like or dislike Load and Reload, what the album's biggest flaws are, they're probably going to tell you they're just too long. Even as someone who, like I said, enjoys both these albums, yes, they are definitely too long. There are a handful of tracks that do not belong. These albums are almost 80 minutes each with 27 songs between both of them, and there are definitely some that could have been cut. A lot of Metallica fans argue that instead of releasing 2 albums, the band should have just taken the best material from Load and the best material from Reload and made one cohesive album. Some people have taken their favorite songs from each album and made their own track listing of what they believe the album just should have been. And I thought that was kind of a cool idea, so I decided to make my own track listing, and that is what we are going to be looking at today. Really, the only limit for this is it has to be under 80 minutes because that is the maximum runtime of a CD. But other than that, pretty much just taking my favorite songs from both albums and compiling them together to try and make the best possible track listing. Just going to be looking at this track listing song by song, so let's dive in. Starting off with Fuel. Give me food, give me fries, give me salad on the side. Ooh, Fuel is really the only option for starting off this track listing. An undeniably great opener. Obviously, it's the opener to Reload, and it is the opener to my track listing here. Really doesn't work anywhere else in the track listing, and honestly, no other song opens as well as Fuel does. Just a great high energy track, probably the most iconic and most liked song from the Load and Reload era. And yeah, just starting off with a bang. Up next is Ain't My Bitch. This is the opening track to Load. Personally, regarding the opening tracks of both albums, I think Fuel is a much stronger opener, though in terms of quality of the songs, I think they're about equal. Ain't My Bitch actually worked pretty well as the second track, just continuing with a lot of energy, carrying a lot of the energy that Fuel started. Up to this point, the album hasn't really explored a ton of sounds, but the way I structured this, I decided to put a lot of the more, I guess, easy listening songs towards the front end, the shorter songs, the more accessible songs, and then as the album kind of goes on, it starts to get a bit more experimental. At least that's the way I see it. And yeah, just opening with 2 back-to-back bangers, I think is a great way to start this album. Track 3 is Devil's Dance. This has always been one of my favorite songs from Load and Reload. It's just a very unique song. It's a slow and groovy one. Just, man, it's just a stank face song. It comes as the 3rd song on Reload and also the 3rd song here. I think it just works well at that point in the album. This is, I guess, a bit of a change in pace from the previous 2 songs. This is just a very slow song, changes up the vibe a little bit. I think it works well here. Up next, track 4 is a bit of a weird one. I'm going with Bleeding Me. Bleeding Me originally comes towards the middle of Load. I decided to put it towards the beginning of this track listing just to kind of change things up a little bit, and I was wondering how it would work, and it actually turned out pretty well. It is a great change in pace, again, from the previous few songs. It's a lot more of a slow burning song. It's one of the longer ones. It introduces clean guitar for the first time. And yeah, I think it just works really well here. It's probably my favorite song from both Load and Reload, and definitely one of my favorite Metallica songs of all time. Up next is The Memory Remains. This is another one where it's at a bit of a different spot on the album. Originally, this is right after Fuel on Reload being the second song. Here it is track 5. I didn't want to stick too closely to where the songs were originally on these albums, just to, spice it up a bit, give a bit more variety. And I found this track actually worked pretty well here, coming after Bleeding Me, which is a bit more of a, like I said, a slow burn song, a bit longer. Memory Remains is one of the more accessible songs and more radio friendly songs from this era. This is a song that honestly is kind of hard to take seriously for me because, if you know, you know. But regardless of that, I still think it is a really good song. I've honestly come around to it. I didn't love it at first, and then more recently I've been getting into it more. Up next is the House Jack Belt, really Alice in Chains sounding song, slowing things down a bit again. Another groovier one, similar to Devil's Dance, I guess. This is another one. Originally it is towards the beginning of Load, and here it is kind of towards the middle of this track listing, but I thought it worked well. Up next is Until It Sleeps. This is actually the only occurrence of 2 songs being the same as the original track listing. On Load, Until It Sleeps comes right after the House the Jack Belt, but I think they worked well together. Until It Sleeps is the first ballad up to this point, and yeah, again, it's a nice change in pace. I try to kind of have some variety of this track listing just so it's not similar sounding songs all back to back. Up next is Ronnie. This is a bit of an odd choice. There's not many Ronnie fans out there. It is essentially a slow southern rock bluesy jam, which is definitely not the first thing you think of when you think Metallica. But I don't know, I've always liked it. I've always thought it had a great groove to it. I love the main riff. And again, just having a bit more variety. I wasn't too sure how it would sound coming right after Until It Sleeps, but it actually sounded pretty good. They are in the same key, so it works nicely with the transition. But yeah, I thought it worked well. And Ronnie is a very slept on song and an overhated song. After that is one of my favorite Metallica ballads, The Unforgiven 2. This is another occurrence of a song being placed very differently than the original. This is originally the 4th song on Reload, and here, it's more towards the end of this track listing. But I thought it worked out pretty well, just having this great power ballad at this point in the album, kind of, again, changing things up a bit. Up next is Where the Wild Things Are, one of my favorite songs from this era again. Another insanely slept on song, one of the most underrated Metallica songs in my opinion. Never even played live. Not a lot of people talk about it, but in my opinion, it is a great song. Continuing with, again, some Alice in Chains influence, which is one thing I really like about Load and Reload is the Alice in Chains influence. It's very cool to see Metallica get inspired by them. But yeah, Where the Wild Things Are, like I was saying earlier, the album slowly gets more experimental as it goes on. Where the Wild Things Are, definitely one of the most experimental Metallica songs. Second to last track is Outlaw Torn. Most people would probably put Outlaw Torn as the final track. However, I decided to put it as the second to last track. That should probably give away that the final track is Fixer. Outlaw Torn and Fixer are both amazing closers to each album, so it was really hard to kind of pick which one closed out this track listing. Honestly, one of the biggest issues I have with making a best of Load and Reload compilation is both the Outlaw Torn and Fixer are great closers for their respective albums and some of my favorite Metallica songs, so I definitely wasn't going to leave one of them off. So it was kind of hard to choose which one closed the album. And honestly, I think originally these songs work better where they are as closers to Load and Reload as opposed to the final 2 songs in this track listing, if that makes any sense. But I decided to go with Outlaw Torn before Fixer because that's how it works chronologically. And also Outlaw Torn fades out, whereas Fixer has more of a proper ending. And I am aware of the uncut version of Outlaw Torn that they released a few months ago with the Load box set where they kept the original ending, but honestly it's not really anything special. It's just kind of a continuation of the jam, whereas Fixer has a stronger ending in my opinion, just kind of building up with the vocals and everything. Yeah, just works great as a closer to the album. But honestly, they work really well as kind of two halves of the same whole, if that makes any sense. But anyways, that would be my track listing for If Load and Reload were a single album. Now, unfortunately, there were some songs that I had to leave off of this track listing, some songs that I really wanted to put on here, most notably Mama Said and Low Man's Lyric. Both fantastic songs, but there just was not enough room for them. There were also a handful of other songs that I enjoy that also got left off. I think if it were up to me, I would turn this into a double album, just like a single double album, as opposed to two really long albums, if that makes any sense, just so I could fit some of my other favorites. And honestly, if I want to listen to these songs, I am probably going to go to the original albums, just because, you know, I want to hear all my favorites. But anyways, that is my track listing. If you have one, then let me know in the comments. And yeah, thanks for watching. You can subscribe if you enjoyed this. You can check out my latest EP, Melodies of Death. It's an entirely acoustic EP. Be sure to check that out. And thanks for watching. I will see you next time.